Welcome to Country Roads Crafts. My name is Frank, and Country Roads Crafts is made up by myself and my wife Holly. We're both originally from West Virginia, but now we live full-time in North Carolina down by the beach, thanks to my tour in the Marine Corps, finishing up here. Today we're going to talk about furniture preparation for that piece of project furniture that you have that you want to prep and paint, but you may not have any real idea how to start if you're new to this. So today we're going to talk about how to prep it, as far as inspecting it to see what all is wrong with it, if there's any repairs that have to be made. We'll talk about some minor repairs. We'll talk about what we could use to clean that with and how to prep it to get it ready for that paint job that you want to put on it to make it beautiful, to paint it beautiful. Here's the piece we're going to look at today. It's one that we found here online on one of the Facebook market pages. A lot of people here in a military town will pick up a piece like this, or maybe inherit it from their family. They plan to do a repair on it, but then end up with orders, or their husband or spouse ends up with orders and they have to leave and don't feel like taking it with them, or they realize that it might be more work than they thought it was going to be, and they don't feel like messing with it, and they let them go for pretty cheap. You can pick them up very reasonably, and sometimes even for free, which this one right here is. So one of the first things you want to do is you want to inspect it to make sure that there's not a lot of damage that you're going to have to mess with if you're trying to pick this up for a price. And of course, most things that are free are worth just that. Here I'm showing you the drawer, one of the drawers for this piece of furniture. Very nice, solid drawers. They have dovetail corners, which I was kind of showing you there, but my videography's not my best skill. There's the front. I've already taken the drawer pulls off of that. Here on the bottom, there's a drawer track or a glide that fits onto a piece that's in the carcass, and we'll see that here just in a second. That keeps it moving in and out straight, and it keeps it from tipping over when you pull it out too far and everything falling out. There's the rail that it fits onto. In this case, it's a wooden rail. You want to make sure that it's not broken, that it's not loose. If it's loose, it's not too hard to fix. A little bit of glue, a couple small brad nails maybe. There are the actual drawer pulls on the second drawer that I haven't taken off yet. And I'll pull it out there and let you see it. Again, a very solidly made drawer, very nice piece of furniture actually, with that same type of track and glide that works together there. And forgive my videography skills here. If you have doors on your piece, you want to check the hinges. And one of the things you want to look for is you want to make sure, see if the screws are all the same. You can always tell that a piece has been taken apart and put back together because some of the screws might not match. And in this case, they don't all match, nor do, they're not even all there. And in this case here, you can see where a screw is missing on this hinge, and and actually almost all the hinges, there's a screw missing. So we're short a few screws. And they're not all the same type of screw, so that's a dead giveaway right there. In fact, this hinge right here that we're looking at, you can see that it's bent a little bit. I'm not sure how that happened, and you can see where it's digging into the stile there. This would be a metal plate that would go here as a door catch that would go into a magnet, or catch up to a magnet that would be right there where my fingers were just rubbing. They were already gone when I picked the piece up. They weren't there. As part of the piece of furniture. You can see that door shuts pretty well, but it does have a little bit of a bounce to it, which I am assuming is due to that hinge right there. And so I probably won't be reusing these hinges. Here's a close-up of the hinges themselves. You can see they've been painted over. You can also see that they've been moved. That there looks like an original screw, but you can see that some of the other screws were not. That one there definitely is not. You can see the impression from where that hinge has been installed and moved there. A little bit of scratching and digging on the outside of the furniture piece. Inside of the door, again, the metal plate's missing. It wasn't there. Some screws are missing. You can see it's a very solidly built door. Very actually nice piece of furniture. It doesn't shut well there either. It's got a little bounce to it. Not a major deal. It would actually be functional just as it is. I'm assuming it's because the hinges were moved, and you can see after I took the hinges off that they had been moved to different holes. I'm assuming that's why the doors aren't shutting as well as they probably ought to. Again, just a very well made thing. You saw there maybe that there were some holes for some shelves that weren't there, so I'll have to make some shelves for each side of this. There's two pieces to this, left and right, so I'll have to make some shelves for that. There's some damage right there on the outside of that door, and there's some dings and gouges just like this throughout the piece that may need to be repaired depending on how I want to finish it. Right here where this stile meets that top rail, there's a gap. I could fill that with glue and clamp it down if I wanted to, and I try to keep it that way, but honestly it's not a big deal. If I was going to glue it, this is what I would use to glue it down with, but I'm just going to fill it up with some plastic wood filler. In this case here, it doesn't have to be extremely strong, so this stuff here works very well. Either type that I just showed you works very well. But in some places on this piece of furniture, which is the most troublesome, is the dog got hold of it and chewed the corners pretty bad. That's one piece there, and you can see there's some contour to that molding that when I go to patch that, I'm going to have to match that contour. The worst part of it is here on the other side, the other corner. You can see where he chewed quite a bit up the side and did a fair amount of damage. Again, you can see the details there that I have to match and contour up. So I need something that's going to be very strong, that's going to hold that, shape that, and that I can sand and make match the contours. So what I'm going to use is Minwax wood filler. I'm not sponsored by any of these guys that I'm showing you, any of these products that I'm showing you. So, but it is a good product. It's a lot like Bondo. You mix it up, you put it on, and it hardens up in about half an hour or so that you can sand it. I recommend if you have big chunks you want to go a little at a time and build it out and then sand it to get it down to the surface that you need. If you try to go too big and just glop it on there, then that's a lot more sanding you're going to have to do. I like to try to make it all at one piece. You can use this Bondo type stuff even if you have like a chipped corner on your drawers or a door. You can actually repair that, and I'm going to show you that here. When I originally did this, the audio didn't come out very well, so bear with me on this. But that piece of wood, scrap wood, I'd wrap it up in some wax paper. That'd be my backer. I would just clamp that to the drawer front. In this case, imagine that corner right there where my hands are at is broken off. I would mix up some of the wood filler, the Bondo type wood filler, and I would apply that. And the wood would make it nice and straight on the back, and then I would try to contour that as well as I could in the front. And after it dries, and again it dries pretty quick, about 30 minutes or so, then I could come back and start sanding that to get it down to the final contoured shape. It's a pretty good option, so you don't have to trash the whole drawer. Here's just showing you how to mix it up. It's two parts. It has the actual filler and then a hardener. It's in this case it's a 16:1 ratio, and you just mix it up for about 30 seconds or until it's all good, uniform in color, and then you have about 10 minutes of working time once you've got it mixed up. Here I'm showing you where I'm putting a second coat on this. I've already done one coat at this point. I'm going to show you a second coat. I use a tongue depressor typically to do my mixing and to apply it. They're cheap, they're expendable, so they work really well for me. Again, just icing on the cake, try to get it on there. You are going to sand it, so you want to overfill it a little bit so you can sand it down smooth so you don't have voids when you get done. But again, don't get too crazy with it, because anything that you have on there over top the surface, you have to sand it back to make it smooth. So you don't want to be stuck here sanding forever trying to get excess wood filler off of it. Speaking of sanding, there's one of the tools I typically use to sand, and that's another one there. That's an oscillating sander, a random orbital sander, I should say. This is a sanding stick. It's just sandpaper glued to a nice firm stick. I use that quite a bit. This is wood rasp that I did use to help get the contours. If you don't have a wood rasp, you can take a wooden dowel or even a pencil and wrap some sandpaper around it to get into those contours and get those shaped out. This oscillating saw or oscillating tool works very well when you have a sanding pad on it to get into some of those details. But for a lot of the work, I would use my random orbital sander. And it doesn't leave a lot of scratch marks. 220 grit sandpaper works very well for this. One of the things you want to make sure you try to do is that you keep the sander flat. Don't try to get up on its edge too much, because you can leave some marring on it and just a bad finish. That door should already be off of there. I shouldn't have it there, which is actually in the way from what I'm trying to show you right here. But once the door is gone, you make sure you get your sander flat so you can get a nice, flat, even surface when you get done sanding. Even with the dust catcher on that, it will create some dust. I should have been wearing a dust collector. Do as I say, not as I do. Once we get it all repaired, those small repairs that we're going to do, the next thing we're going to do is clean it. Clean it well. There's lots of materials we could use to clean it with. I'm going to show you a couple that I would typically use, but there are actually lots of them that you could use to clean this with. Any real good household cleaner actually would work. But we want to make sure it's good and clean so that the paint has something that it can adhere to. The first one is TSP for me, trisodium phosphate. It's one I've been using for years. It is kind of a harsh cleaner. If you have acrylic nails like my wife, this stuff will eat your nails, so you make sure you're wearing gloves if you're using it. Fusion Mineral Paint, which we do sell, we do have a financial tie to these guys. We sell their paint. They also make a TSP alternative that isn't full of phosphates and won't. If the furniture came from a kid's room, it's got stickers all over it, from superheroes to Barbies or whatever, this stuff right here will help get all that off. It's like gum out. It works pretty well for that. It's new from Fusion Paint. Talking about priming this, certain cases you will want to prime it, and Fusion Mineral Paint comes, actually you can get these handy dandy little prep cards. I'm sure either Holly has a link to them online maybe, and we have them in our stores in the Foundry and in Twice's and in Antique to Chic. That actually walks you through what needs to be done for prepping different surfaces. For a lot of surfaces, if it's just painted with flat paint, if it's a nice flat paint, then you don't have to sand it at all. You just may want to do a light scuff sanding with some 220 grit sandpaper to just get a little bit of texture to it so that the paint has something to stick to. A lot of older type furniture that has a nice dull finish, nice soft finish to it. There's really not much you have to do to it. Maybe a light scuff sanding. If it's a high gloss paint, and this paint here for sure, we're going to have to do a scuff sand on that and actually take it down if there's any paint that's coming loose. And you can see in some places where there is paint coming loose, kind of flaking off, like right there. You want to make sure all of that is gone and away. Because if that paint itself isn't sticking to the wood, then your Fusion Mineral Paint or whatever paint you're going to use on top of it isn't going to stick either. It's going to come off with the old paint. So you want to get rid of that, and that's going to be with a scuff sand. Again, just 220. You can do it by hand. It doesn't. We're not trying to necessarily take all the paint off. You're just trying to roughen it up so that your paint will stick to it. Certain circumstances, you're going to want to use some kind of a sealer, which would be Kilts is one of the name brands that I use most often. I'm not sponsored by them. I don't get no money from them or anything. But it is the brand that I typically use. It's what I've kind of used all my life, I guess. So Kilts primer coat will work. Fusion uses a product. They recommend a product called BIN, B-I-N. BIN primer. Water-based. And it's a water-based primer, so it doesn't have any smells and all that kind of neat stuff to it. That's all cool. I've never really used it. I'm not saying it's good or bad. Just not something I've ever used, so I can't really give you an opinion on it. This is one type of the kilts I was talking about. They actually make several different varieties for different purposes. This is just one type. This is the bin made by Zinsser. I've never tried it, so assuming it's good. For extremely slick surfaces like glass or metal or maybe for mica, you could use this Ultra Grip to help make it stick to the surface, and it will give the paint something to bond to. We'll take, for instance, a piece of furniture, especially older antique type furniture, that may have a lot of furniture polish built up, a lot of wax built up on it, depending on what kind of furniture it was. That wax is can be some of the toughest stuff to work with. You do need to take the wax off. It will have to come off of there because it won't bond with the paint. And so you can remove that using some kind of mineral spirits. You don't have to get anything really toxic, but mineral spirits typically take that off. You can cut it off with that. So that would work for you. Denatured alcohol would help. Acetone would work. Make sure you wear gloves, especially if you like your fingernails. So as soon as you get all the wax off, or as soon as you think you have all the wax off, then you want to do a nice light sanding on top on the surface to make sure all the wax is gone. Because again, the wax will block the paint from adhering to the wood. And so we're either going to do nothing in some cases, except for clean it with TSP or TSP alternative, or we might have to do a light sanding coat depending on what type of surface we have. Shiny surface behind me, we're going to do a light sand on that, a scuff sand on that. And then in some cases, you'll actually want to do a prep, some kind of a sealer prep on it, being the kilts or the bend sealer. And once you have that done, now you're ready to let it sit there and wait and dry so that you can get on to the next step, which will be painting. And we'll talk about that in the next video. So I hope to see you back next time when we finish this project and paint it all up. We appreciate y'all tuning in to us. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. And watch out for other videos that we'll be doing in the future. This is Frank from Country Roads Crafts. We do thank you for viewing us. Make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed it, at least for comic relief. And then tell some friends, subscribe to us so you can catch our videos. We have them on YouTube and on Facebook. So thanks a lot, and adios from Frank and Holly.